Hey everybody, I'm Alan with Dad's Playing Games, and this is the 9th video for our solo campaign for the game of Frostgrave. Be sure to check the details below for timestamps for this video, and there you'll also find links to some of our other Frostgrave content. In this video, we will see Zultar the Enchanter against Braila the Chronomancer as they square off in the scenario called The Keep, found in the core rulebook. This scenario takes place inside a ruined building with an ancient transportation system. Now normally, the scenario calls for 4 2-inch diameter discs to be placed on the board, but instead I'll be using something different you'll see shortly, and I'll be incorporating some cheesy dad-style sound effects. Recently, I was taking a look at a section of the rulebook that I hadn't looked at since probably back when I started playing the game, and that's the section on Apprentice spellcasting. And I realized I've been doing something wrong for my entire campaign so far. The rules state that when an Apprentice casts a spell, it gets a -2 on all of their casting rolls. But I had been playing where I just set all their casting numbers to higher. So if the Wizard's casting number is 10, I had the Apprentice's casting number at 12. Although this difference in how I was doing it doesn't really affect whether a spell is cast or not, it does affect its casting numbers. So something like an Elemental Bolt would still be cast the same. Having either a -2 to their roll or a +2 to their casting number is really the same difference. However, with something like Blinding Light or Mind Control, even if the spell is successful, the target number for the opposing will roll is essentially too lower than how I'd been playing it. And that makes all those will roll causing spells slightly less useful than I thought when cast by an Apprentice. So now that that's all cleared up, and I will be using the appropriate Apprentice spell casting method going forward, let's take a look at the Enchanters and the Chronomancers. Now, the last time these two Warbands met up was in the Living Museum scenario, and in that battle, only one member of Braila's Warband actually made it off the board, while Zultar's Warband made it away with 6 treasures. So in this battle, Zultar's hoping to do the same, and Braila's Warband is hoping to do better than they did last time, and Braila is hoping to finally make it off the board standing. So with that, we will now take a look at what these two warbands have been doing since we saw them last time. Braila and her warband finally saw success with their decided victory at the haunted houses. Unfortunately, it came at the cost of Krell the Red, who died in combat. However, their ranger proved to be a valuable asset, taking out an apprentice, an archer that was trying to run off the board with treasure, and badly wounding an enemy ranger. His utility and combat prowess has led Braila to promote him to be their Warband's captain. This is Walgrid the Bat Knight. The Warband took the loot they'd found at the haunted houses back to the black market, and there they sold their duplicate grimoire of Animal Companion and potions of invulnerability and invisibility. They purchased a grimoire of Fast Act and Boots of Speed. While there, Walgrid introduced the warband to another ranger he knows, and Braila hired him to join them. Back at their base, the spellcasters learned the spell Fast Act and improved their ability to cast Wall and Reveal Secret. Braila starts this battle at level 8 with 115 gold crowns in her vault. Walgrid the Bat Knight carries a 2-handed axe and a crossbow, and he wears heavy armor and the warband's magical Boots of Speed. He also carries a potion of strength. He has increased his fight to +3 to go along with shoot +1, will +3, 12 health, and his equipment puts his move at 6 and his armor at 12. He has the tricks of the trade coup de grace and steady hand. The Enchanter's trip to the Well of Dreams and Sorrows proved to be quite treacherous. Zultar was pushed into the well, which required a survival roll after the battle, Although he technically received a smashed jaw, for story purposes, I'm saying that the magical waters he nearly drowned in appear to have negative effects on the lungs and vocal cords, which has hampered his ability to speak his magical words correctly, resulting in a -1 to all of his casting rolls. Also in the battle, the Warband's thief was killed. With the treasure they recovered, they found a grimoire of miraculous cure, and the spellcasters have spent their time poring over that grimoire to learn the spell, and they also improved their ability to cast teleport and increase their fighting skill. They sold a candle of summoning they'd found, and as required for their captain Winsu, they paid him 11% of all the gold crowns they earned, as well as 11% of the equipment they sold, which came out to 33 gold crowns. Zultar equipped their newly enchanted sword and bought himself some gloves of casting. And to fill the void left by the dead thief, they hired a barbarian. Zultar is now a level 11 wizard, and he starts this battle with just 57 gold crowns and a pile of potions in his vault. Now we'll get to their out-of-game spells. The enchanters Zultar and Ulag have no out-of-game spells they can cast before the game. The Chronomancers do, however. And as I mentioned in the intro, I realized I was doing Apprentice spells wrong. I used to think that their base number was 2 higher, but what it is they have the same base number, they just subtract -2 from all of their rolls. So I've fixed that by changing how all their casting numbers are written. So starting with Animal Companion, Braila has already summoned 1 Bearcat into their party, and each spellcaster can only have 1 Animal Companion, so only Bralak can attempt this. He needs a 12, he has a -2 to this roll. Failure, no Bearcat for him. Braila will attempt to reveal a secret. It's normally a 12. They both have a +2 to this roll because they are based in a tower. Yeah, 22. That's successful. They can only have 1 revealed secret, so they get to place 1 additional treasure. I totally forgot that I had Zultar learn Miraculous Cure to try to cure his injury. So we'll go ahead and cast that here out of game. So first Zultar, 16. Hey, success. So that means that his injury, which was the smashed jaw, or in this case his injured lungs, is all cured up right off the bat. The board is all set up here. I've rolled for sides and moved the table so we've got left side and right side are the player sides. Here we have the ruined keep in the middle with some of the walls still remaining. And around the border we've got 4 barrels. Normally it calls for discs, but I've got a son who's a huge Mario fan, so instead we've made barrels that work kind of like tubes that will randomly transport you around. Inside each one of those barrels is a treasure, and so if someone travels through a disc, they can potentially pick that up. And the scenario also calls for 2 treasures to be placed right in the middle of the battlefield. So that should be fun trying to get to those. So we'll roll to see who sets up on which side. Okay, and Braila is setting up first. Braila's Warband is all set up over here. We have Braila herself with her treasure hunter ready to go into this barrel tube. Over here, Bralak the Apprentice with their captain, Walgrid, a tracker, their new ranger, their thug, and their bearcat. Right here is their revealed treasure. And the last 2 members of their team, they have a tracker and their men-at-arms there. For Zultar's Warband, over here we have Zultar the Enchanter with an archer, their treasure hunter, their men-at-arms, and their other archer. Zultar is excited to go into that tube and see where it might lead. And over here we have their captain Winsu with their other archer. There's Grok, their new barbarian, and Ulag the Apprentice. Rolling initiative for the first round. Alright, now it looks like it's going to go to Zultar. To start out here, Zultar, now with his lungs healed and his magical sword, he is going to just activate by himself and run over and hop into this tube. And to see where this tube takes him, 4. Since this is the first time anyone's used it, let's take a look. 1 to 5, he's transported to the disc immediately to his left. Blue, 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 blue. And he pops out here. Now, normally, this is supposed to be a 2-inch disc, and they're supposed to be able to stand anywhere on it. Since I'm doing these barrels, I'll just say they can come out and they just have to touch the tube. And if they have come out and are still touching the tube, they can pick up the treasure if they want. So he will go right there. And from there, he can just barely see this barbarian, and he will cast Enchant Weapon on his axe. He casts this on a 7. 17, success. Braila will activate with her treasure hunter, and Braila is just going to run and hop into this tube. See where she goes. A 19. So that pops her back out right next to this. Again, the way I'm playing this, she could still pick up that treasure if she wants, but instead she's going to cast Fast Act over here on their captain. She casts this on an 8. Success. The captain will go first before anybody else next turn. The treasure hunter now will also run and jump into the tube. See where she's warped to. 17. So she also stays right where she is. Now, there's nothing in the rules that say you can't just then move off the base and then jump back in, so that's what she'll do for her second move. This time, 17 again. She stays right where they are. So apparently this tube has some malfunction or something. For the Apprentice phase, Ulag will cast Enchant Armor on Grok's armor. He casts on an 8 with a -2 on the roll. 10, so that's an 8. Success. Then Ulag will run 6 inches right up over to here. Braila will group activate with the Bearcat and the Thug. He'll have the Thug activate first, and he'll just run up and grab this treasure. And we'll roll to see if a random monster appears on a 16 plus. Yes. See which level the encounter is. 14 is a level 2 encounter, and we have 9, which is an ice spiders. 1 ice spider. To find out where it appears, we have 1 going, starting there, going this way. 2. 2 is right over here. And there's our little ice spider. Relic will move 6 inches, which will put him right there, and then he will cast Fleet Feet on this tracker. Casting number 9, -2 to the roll is a 6. He will empower that for 3. And then the Bearcat will do a double move past the Thug, past Bralic, right to the base of the ladder. For soldiers, we'll start out with having Grok hop into the tube to see where that tube takes him. 18, he stays right where he is. He'll use his second action to walk off and walk back in. 2. So that will take him to the left. So blue, 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 blue. He's going to pop out of this one, and he'll engage Braila. That's his second action, so he'll just sit there. The Barbarian is also going to jump into the tube. He gets 7. That sends him to the opposite side of the table. Blue, 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 blue. Blue. So he pops up right there, and he'll use his second action to go ahead and pick up that treasure. Roll to see if the monster appears. Nope. So he is carrying that treasure. ready to face off against those two. Over here, both the Man-at-Arms and the Treasure Hunter have rings of teleportation. So the Man-at-Arms can see right through here, so he will use his ring of teleportation to go over there. Right there. Then he'll move 6 inches, which will put him about halfway up this ladder. Right there. The Treasure Hunter will do the same thing. Ring of teleportation to there, and he'll be right up next to the Man-at-Arms. Alright, they're climbing up there. This archer here is going to run and jump into that tube. He can just barely get there on a single move. Now I've decided that instead of referencing the book every time to figure out if they travel to the left or the right or across, I'm just going to number all the tubes. So we've got 1 through 5, 6 through 10, 11 through 15, 16 to 20 to determine where they land. 3. Blue, 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 blue. Blue, 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 blue. Pops up right there. And he'll use his second action to grab the treasure out of that barrel. Alright. Roll for a random encounter. Nope. This archer will do a double move into the barrel. See where he ends up. 20. Well, with my new numbering system, that puts him right where he's at. A lot of these tubes are not going anywhere. So he hops out. But on his next turn, he can grab that treasure. So that's actually kind of right where he wanted to be. Over here, this archer will do a double move. He has to climb up this, calling that rough terrain. To right there. For Winsu, he'll do a double move up this, over to here, to right there. Over to the Chronomancer's Warband. We'll start over here by having this tracker fire an arrow at this Cyclops Barbarian. Shoot +2 against fight +5. 8 to 22 fail. Then the tracker will run up and engage the Barbarian. And now the Man-at-Arms will run up and engage the Barbarian. The Man-at-Arms will attack with the support. It's +5 versus +5. Alright, the Man-at-Arms wins with a 17. That is 7 damage to the Barbarian. Originally, I'd planned to have these guys all kind of run through the center and try to get up to these treasures, but it's going to be quite the contest with these two guys and him and maybe some elemental balls coming. So instead, they are going to try to support their flanks here. To do that, we'll have Walgrid do a double move over here to the Barbarian. He can get within an inch, so then he can snap into combat. Both the Tracker and the Ranger can double move through here to support Braila and their Treasure Hunter as they fight Grok the Wizard Slayer. Alright, they got some nice support there. Some nice support here. We'll roll to see which direction this Ice Spider goes. Using the numbering system around the table. 9. 9 is right here. I'll move this direction. Now it can see that archer down there, so we'll move 3 inches that direction. Initiative for the next round. Alright, Zultar barely wins that. Even though Zultar won, Walgrid has Fast Act cast on him, so he will activate and he can group activate with the Man-at-Arms, so they will both attack this Barbarian. Since this is a group activation, both soldiers have to give up their move to go to their second action. So we'll have Walgrid attack first. He's normally +3. He's supported by 2 soldiers, so he's +7. The Barbarian would normally be +5, but I've forgotten he's actually encumbered, so he's +4. +7, +4. All right, we got 18 to 22. That's not good. So with that 22 and the +2 damage from the two-handed weapon, even though Walgrid has 12 armor, that's still 12 damage, which is enough to take out their captain before he even had a chance to really do anything. But since he did group activate with this man-at-arms, we'll have the man-at-arms attack. +5 for the man-at-arms against +4. 21 to 13. That is 11 damage. That's enough to take out the already injured barbarian. Now for the wizard phase, Zultar will activate with this archer. And the archer will fire an arrow at that spider. Archer is +2, the spider is +0. That is a dead spider. The archer will then start running off with his treasure. Then Zultar is going to cast Teleport to try to get up here onto this tower. He casts on a 12, and he will use his Gloves of Casting once per battle to give a +5 to a roll. Didn't need it, but he definitely got it. He warps up here. So from there you can see most of the battlefield to launch elemental balls and whatnot. Now over here to this giant melee, Braila is going to activate with all 3 of these soldiers. They're all in combat with Grok. So we'll have the treasure hunter first attack. The treasure hunter is a +8 against +4. 16 to 16. I just realized the treasure hunter actually has a +10 to her attack because she's supported by 3 soldiers. So she actually won that with an 18, which would deal 6 damage to the armored orc. Next, the ranger will attack, and he does have a +8. +8, +4. Critical hit to critical miss. Well, after taking a hit to the side from the treasure hunter, the ranger sneaks up and crushes him in the back of the head with his axe. Grok the Wizard Slayer does not slay a wizard this battle. The ranger will use his second action to move into the pipe. He goes to point 2. Bloop, 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 bloop. Bloop, 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 bloop. And he will pop out over here and force combat with the Apprentice. The tracker will also hop in the tube. He gets warped to point 17, which is over here. Bloop, 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 bloop. Bloop, bloop, bloop. I'll have him pop out right there so he's more than an inch away from this archer, so the archer can't snap into combat. Then the tracker will fire an arrow at the archer. Oh, he did move, so +2 versus +3. Critical hit again. Alright, so this archer wasn't expecting anybody to come out of the portal and takes an arrow to the face. Now that everyone around her is gone, Braila will jump into this tube. And we'll see where she goes. 11 puts her right here. Bloop, 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 bloop. Bloop, 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 bloop. And she will go right over here and cast Fleet Feet on this tracker. She casts on a 9. 14, success. For the Apprentice phase, Ulag is now engaged with this similarly hooded ranger over here. So Ulag will activate with this archer, and he'll have the archer run over and engage. The archer will attack the ranger. +2 versus +2. 19 for Braila's ranger. That deals 8 damage to that archer, and he will push him out of combat. Since the enchanters like to take risks for trying to get reward, Ulag will go ahead and attack rather than wait for backup. That'll be a +2 versus +2. 20 for Ulag and only 19 for the ranger. He does have a staff. The ranger has 11 armor, so that is 8 damage to the ranger. Ulag will push himself out of combat and then run over this way. For Braila, he will activate with this Bearcat, and he'll start out by casting Fleet Feet on himself. Casting number 9, and he has a -2 to that, so it's a 5. He will let that fail. Fails by 4, so no damage. Then he will run through here to right there. The Bearcat now will run up this ladder over this treasure. You can't get it to stand properly, but it's actually kind of hanging off the ladder here to engage the man-at-arms, and their treasure hunter will snap into combat. So all 3 of those are in combat halfway up the ladder. For the soldier phase, for Zultar, we'll go ahead and have their treasure hunter attack the Bearcat. He is at a +6 with support. +6, +4. The Bearcat wins with a 19. 19 deals 8 damage to that treasure hunter. And since the Bearcat is mostly trying to just keep these guys at bay to prevent them from getting to this treasure or getting to somewhere else on the board, he will not push the treasure hunter out of combat. Now the man-at-arms will attack with a +5. +5, +4. 21 to 21, so they both deal damage. That's 11 damage to the Bearcat, 9 damage to the man-at-arms. Neither figure is able to push the other out of combat since they both won. Now we'll go to Winsu. He is going to run over here and take a shot at that ranger. Winsu has a shoot +1 against fight +2. Well, fight +3 because Winsu moved. And the ranger dodges the crossbow bolt. We'll turn his crossbow around because he's unloaded. This archer, well, both these archers have already gone. So now we go over to Braila's soldier phase. Starting with this thug, he's going to try to get this treasure out of here. He can't quite get off the table. This tracker is the last soldier to go. He wants to come pick up this treasure, but Zultar's up there in the tower, and he can see the man-at-arms with a elemental ball, so he does not want to be anywhere around that man-at-arms. So even though my initial plan was to get this tracker to the treasure and get him out with the Fleet Feet, I'm instead going to have him do some attacking. Got this set up so I know where line of sight is, and Zultar would be within 24 inches. And he'll fire an arrow up at Zultar. It will be a hard shot. He moved, and Zultar has light cover. So Zultar has a 12 +8 against +2. And the arrow fails. All soldiers have activated. The only monster on the table is dead, and we will roll initiative for the next round. Reroll. Alright, Zultar goes first again. Zultar will in fact cast Elemental Ball, and he will cast it at the man-at-arms since he is closest. He's actually in contact with the treasure there. He casts on a 12. 3. He fails by 9. That's not worth empowering. He takes 1 point of damage. With that failure, Zultar is going to come down here and get into combat with this tracker. He can move over to here, climb down part of this wall, and then drop down once it's a safe distance. And engage the tracker. Braila is within 3 inches of both of these soldiers, so she'll activate with both of them, and the tracker will go ahead and be their designated treasure gatherer after all. He'll come over here and pick that up. It's already been picked up once by the dead Cyclops. And the man-at-arms will hop into this tube. He warps to tube number 7, which is down there. Bloop, 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 bloop. Bloop, 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 bloop. And he'll use his second action to grab that treasure chest out of the barrel. Check for a random monster. Nope. Braila is going to take a risk and hop into the tube. She goes to spot 8 also. Bloop, 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 bloop. Bloop, 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 bloop. From there, she will cast Fast Act on the treasure hunter, casting on an 8. Success. For the Apprentice phase, Ulag will run over here. He has to kind of crawl through some water to get right there, and he'll cast Enchant Weapon on himself. Cast on a 7, -2 to the roll. It's a -1, so he fails by 8, takes 1 point of damage. Relic will double move into that tube. He warps to tube 7 also. Bloop, 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 bloop. Bloop, 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 bloop. For soldier phase, first this treasure hunter will attack the Bearcat. +6 versus +4. 13 to 12. That is 3 points of damage on the Bearcat, which is just enough damage to defeat it. Bearcat, we'll just say it falls down. Get it out of the way there. Then the treasure hunter will run up. He'll just run up here and stand next to that. This man-at-arms will run up, and he will pick up that treasure. Monster check. A monster appears. See what level the encounter is. 20. Level 3 encounter. We have 5, which is a wraith. The wraith appears on spot number 15, which will be right here. And there he is in all his spooky glory. We never saw a wraith in the haunted houses scenario, but here they are apparently. This archer can run off the board here, securing the first treasure of the game, with Winsu wanting to try to get a kill to add some experience. They'll have the archer run into combat and just stand there. Then Winsu will run into combat. And Winsu will attack. Winsu is a +6 with support against +2. 15 to 20. Ooh. The ranger wins. Winsu has 12 armor, so that is 8 damage. And the ranger will push Winsu out of combat. For Braila's soldier phase, this thug will run off the board with this treasure. And this treasure hunter will jump into the tube. She warps to tube 6. Blue, 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 blue. She comes out to the same spot. She'll go back in with her second action. 18. Blue, 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 blue. Blue, 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 blue. Which is right where she wanted to be. Unfortunately, it took her 2 actions, so she cannot attack. But this tracker will attack now with support. Tracker is +4, Zultar is +5. 13 to 14. So Zultar wins that, dealing, let's see here, the tracker has a staff. The tracker takes 2 damage. Zultar will push the tracker out of combat. And we'll have this ranger attack this archer. +2 versus +2. We got 18 for Zultar's archer against 17 for the ranger. So with that 18, it's -1 damage. So that is 6 damage to the ranger. And the ranger only had 4 health left, so the ranger goes down. And the last part of this round is this wraith will run up and engage Zultar. Zultar does have a magical weapon, so he can damage the wraith if he wins a fight. The wraith does not gain support from the treasure hunter. Support is only granted to friendly units. The Zultar is +5, the wraith is +2. Wow, Zultar quickly dispatches that wraith. New round, we'll roll initiative. Alright, the Chronomancer's got the initiative this time. Braila will activate with this man-at-arms. And the man-at-arms will drop his treasure and hop in the tube. Check for location. 10. Blue, 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 blue. Blue, 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 blue. Well, he wasn't able to get down there into the combat, but oh well. Braila will jump in. She goes to space 6. She stays there. Blue, 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 blue. She will use her second action to pick up the treasure. Over here, Zultar will attack the treasure hunter. +5 versus +4. Or 20 to 23. That is 13 damage. He does have a ring of protection, +1, so it's 12 damage, bringing him down to 2. And the treasure hunter will stay in combat there. Braila will move into the tube. He comes out at spot number 7. He'll get out and try again. 7. He will stay there. Ulag will run over here, and on a single move he can snap into combat. He will attack with the support of his wizard. +4 versus +4. Ooh, and the treasure hunter wins, dealing 4 damage to the apprentice. Puts him down to 6. Braila will put him out of combat. Then the tracker will engage Zultar. With support, it's +4 versus +5. 12 to 9. So with that total of 12, that would be 1 damage, but the tracker is carrying a staff, so no damage. The treasure hunter will now attack with +6. 16. Oh, to 23. 12 damage on the treasure hunter. She goes down. Over here, this tracker with fleet feet can get off the board on a double move, securing another treasure. Braila's team has no other soldiers that haven't gone, so over to here. Winsu will hop into the tube and teleport to space number 9. Blue, 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 blue. Blue, 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 blue. And engage Braila. And he will attack. +4 for Winsu, plus only 2 because she's encumbered. But she wins with a 19. Winsu is down to 4, so he falls. Neither captain walks off this battlefield. This archer, also hoping to try to stop another treasure from leaving, hops in here and warps to point 17. Blue, 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 blue. Blue, 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 blue. He can't pick up this treasure because there's a figure within 1 inch. And he can't really get anywhere. He's going to have to come over here and then spend a second move to enter combat. Up here, this treasure hunter, he's not carrying the treasure yet. He will try to pick it up. He will pick it up, see if a monster shows up. No. Then he will run half move down this ladder. The knight will run and do a double move down the ladder. He'll get most of the way down and drop. Okay, and that is all the soldiers. Initiative for the next round is a tie. Alright, Zultar is going first. Over here, Zultar will activate with the archer, and the archer will attack, or +4 with support against +2. Alright, the archer wins that with a 20. He has a dagger, the tracker has a staff, so that is a total of 7 damage to the tracker. There's one treasure left that's unclaimed, and it's in here, and so a figure has to land on that to collect the treasure. Zultar wants to try to take out this tracker so he can get to that, even though Zultar is almost dead himself. With support, Zultar has a 7 against +2. 25. More than enough to take him down. And after he takes down that tracker, he will jump in this tube. He shows up at point number 15. Blue, 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 blue. Blue, 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 blue. And he doesn't really want to engage that man-at-arms at this point. Over here, Braila will cast Fleet Feet on herself. An 11 is success. She needed a 9. She can move 4 inches, which puts her right over here. For the Apprentice phase, Ulag is going to make an attempt to get to this treasure. He'll hop in there. He goes to point 2. Blue, 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 blue. Blue, 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 blue. He'll hop back in and go to point 18. Blue, 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 blue. Blue, 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 blue. So now that he's in base contact, he can try to pick that treasure up on his next turn. Over here, Braila will run off the board. For soldier phase, this thief, or this treasure hunter, will do an encumbered double move to there. And the man-at-arms will follow. Braila's man-at-arms will run off the board completely. Now for initiative for the next round. Right, Zultar does go first, so he's going to jump into this tube. And that 18 is exactly what they wanted. Blue, 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 blue. Blue, 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 blue. And since he's in contact with that tube now, he can pick up that treasure. There's no point in rolling a random monster. Braila will be running off the board with that treasure, which will end the game. And since those two soldiers are carrying those treasures and Zultar's carrying this one, they will secure those after the game. That battle went well for the Enchanters. They collected more than half the treasure. Both spellcasters walked off the board. They took some risks with their strategy, with using the tubes to teleport around, and it seemed to pay off. They're a little disappointed that their captain fell in combat without doing a whole lot, but as is usual for Zultar, all their soldiers are expendable. So let's see how these 4 fallen soldiers fare. Starting with the archer, he is fine. The new barbarian, he is dead. Grok the Wizard Slayer, he's fine. And Winsu their captain, 10, he is fine as well. Now to figure out their 4 treasures. 4, 12, 19, 18. 30 gold crowns and 3 potions. 60 gold crowns and a magical item. 120 gold crowns and a grimoire, and 150 gold crowns and a grimoire. There are 3 potions. 9, 15, 16. elixir of speed, and 2 potions of invulnerability. Their magical item, 19, a drinking horn of healing, and for their grimoires, column 4, 19, and column 4, 9. Column 4, 9 is mind control, and 19 is reveal secret. Now, mind control is one of the spells that I am not using in my campaign, so that is just a magic book that if they get another magic book of mind control, they can sell the second one. Otherwise, it has no use. For after game spells, Zultar will attempt to cast Absorb Knowledge on a 10. Success. For Embed Enchantment, they'd cast Enchant Weapon on the Cyclops' axe. Since that soldier died, that weapon is gone. But they cast Enchant Armor on Grok's armor, so they'll try to embed that. We will have Zultar try that. 5, that's a failure. Ulag will try that. 6, that is also a failure. So no embedded enchantments. For experience points, they had 2 failed spells that caused them damage for 10. They had 3 successful spells for 30. They collected 4 treasures for 200. They defeated 2 monsters for 10. Zultar went through the warp, which gave him 50 bonus experience for this scenario, giving him a total of 300 experience. And after the battle, he cast Absorb Knowledge, which allows him to go beyond that 300 cap up to 320 experience points. That goes along with 360 gold crowns, potions of speed, and 2 potions of invulnerability, a drinking horn of healing, and grimoires of mind control and reveal secret. Even though the Chronomancers only pulled 3 treasures off the board, they're not too disappointed with that. They know they're up against a pretty tough opponent, and Braila was happy to actually walk off this battlefield for the first time so far. But in this battle, they ended up with a few casualties. So let's see the fate of these soldiers. Starting with the Bearcat. The Bearcat is dead. The Tracker, he's fine. The Treasure Hunter, she is fine. Their new Ranger, oh, he died. That's too bad. Alright, their Captain here, 10. He is fine. So, a little bit of an expensive loss there. Now to check their 3 treasures. 1, 10, and 18. D20 times 10 gold, 20 gold crowns and a magical item, and 120 gold crowns and a grimoire. First, we'll check their D20 times 10 gold. 19, 190 gold. Their magic item, 4, a ring of power. And their grimoire, column 4, number 15, a grimoire of elemental shield. They actually already have that grimoire, so they will be able to sell that. For after game spells, I recently realized that Animal Companion does not specify whether it's cast before or after a battle. So although Braila did attempt to cast this before the battle, right now is the start of a new out-of-game sequence. So they will both attempt to cast this now, and then they can't cast it before the next battle. They cast on a 12, starting with Braila. Failure, and Braila with a -2 to his roll. Failure, so didn't really matter either way. For experience points, they had 1 failed spell that caused damage for 5, 4 successful spells for 40. They collected 3 treasures for 150, and Braila went through one of the warp tubes, giving her 50 bonus experience for the scenario, for a total of 245 experience points. That goes along with 330 gold crowns, a ring of power, and a grimoire of elemental shield. Well, One takeaway from this battle is that I am still not sold on the captains. Walgrid the Bat Knight over here fell in combat on his first attack roll, and he was even supported by 2 other soldiers for that attack. And Winsu over here, he lost all 3 of his attack rolls and ended up just falling in combat without really doing anything. And so the fact that these 2 soldiers are eating up my resources after every battle, I still don't know if they're a valuable member of these warbands or not, but we'll see as the campaign goes on. As far as some things that stood out with these warbands, with Zultar, I have to say that he got lucky on a couple things. The first was when he cast that miraculous cure at the start of the game and happened to cure his lung injury, jaw injury, just right off the bat before he really ever faced consequences with that. And that was something I kind of thought would plague him for at least a few battles in the campaign, but he got lucky. And then again at the end, right at the end, he managed to roll better initiative on that final roll, and then he just by luck managed to go through the right warp tube to get to where he could pick up that final treasure so that it wasn't just left there unclaimed when Braila left, which meant that they might, if had that been the case, they might not have actually retrieved that 4th treasure. And if luck is what it takes for Zultar to succeed, he'll take whatever he gets. And he ended up getting some good stuff from this battle. He maxed out his experience, which I think he's done that a couple other times, and he got some decent loot as well, including a Grimoire of Reveal Secret, which could help him get more treasure off the board next time. For Braila, she finally made it off the battlefield standing. And even though they only retrieved 3 of the 7 treasures, I think they're happy with that, considering who they were up against. One thing in that battle was initially they'd planned to just charge the middle going for those 2 treasures in the middle, but I think if they'd continued with that strategy, it would have just been suicide considering the powered up soldiers that Zultar had going towards the middle. And so by taking the flanks and just kind of gambling on the randomness of those portals, I think it ended up paying off for them in the long run. And with the treasures they got a fair amount of gold crowns and a grimoire that they'll be able to sell. And they got a pretty good amount of experience points as well. So I think it was a good battle for them. With this scenario, I liked all the teleporters. It kind of changed the focus. Usually there's a lot of focus on the middle of the battlefield, but it made it where you never really knew where your soldiers would end up on the board and what enemy soldiers might end up behind your lines. So it really changed the tension. But it does create a fair amount of randomness. And one of Frostgrave's strengths is the randomness of the D20. So in some ways, I think it just adds to that. But it does make it a little harder for strategic choices because you just don't know what's going to happen with your soldiers or the enemy soldiers. And the lure of 50 experience points for sending your wizard through one of those portals is just tempting enough to warrant the gamble on that risk. One recommendation I have to anybody playing this scenario is to assign numbers to each of the portals on the board. I did this after, 3 or so warps around because it got really tedious as I would make a roll, then I'd have to refer to the book to figure out if they were moving left or right or crosswise. It's just easier to assign a number and then you don't have to think about which direction they're trying to move. Now, since I used these tubes as the teleporters instead of the 2-inch diameter discs that the rules call for, I was able to put the treasure token down inside the tube. Either way, you're required to get on top of the teleporter and then get warped around to one of the other spots before you can try to pick up that treasure token. But one thing I want to point out is if you're playing the normal way with a disc with an exposed treasure on it, that telekinesis can be used to kind of break the scenario. And this is because you can just simply pull the treasure token off and never actually have to go and touch the teleporter. So this can really help you get those treasure tokens on your side of the board before you have to travel through the portals. I noted kind of a similar issue in the haunted houses scenario, where normally in that scenario you have to walk into a house, which could potentially trigger a wraith to appear to pick up the treasures, but you can just pull the treasure out with telekinesis. So it kind of seems like there should be a rule that those treasures cannot be affected while they're sitting on the portal. But maybe that's just why telekinesis is such a strong spell. And those are my thoughts about the scenario, The Keep. If you like what we're doing here, you can click like or subscribe so that you can keep up to date with all the Frostgrave content that we're releasing. You can also comment below, whether you're watching this brand new or weeks or months later. Let me know your experiences with the scenario or what you thought. And with that, I'm Alan with Dad's Playing Games, and we'll see you on our next video.